Yeah, I just want to read a little bit from this Times article. It just shows you what they're thinking. This is from Ed Conway. He says, "Don't take this the wrong way, but if you were a young hardline environmentalist looking for the ultimate weapon against climate change, you could hardly design anything better than coronavirus. Unlike most other such diseases, it kills mostly the old, who, let's face it, are more likely to be climate skeptics." He is erotic about this. These are all the things that, he say, "Oh, I'm not saying this, but let me just say it and pretend someone else is saying it." That's his lead sentence in the Times. These guys are excited.
They are. And again, it reduces population, it lowers carbon footprint, it reduces travel. And here's the key thing, it increases government intrusion. Imagine this, quarantines, shutting down of industries, keeping kids home from school, shutting an entire, sporting events down. They're looking at a complete, essentially a dictatorial style response to this in many governments. Now, I happen to believe this is, again, there's a lot of serious people looking at this, and people like Michael Fomento actually has a great column in the New York Post on the coronavirus. But I think, as Roosevelt said, and at the beginning of World War II for FDR, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. So the greatest threat we face is the government and media counter reaction to this virus. But it's really a chilling effect, and it should be eye-opener to anyone willing to investigate what the climate activists, what the media, what the UN officials have to say about this. And they are just drooling at the prospect of this government expansion, the government power that's going to happen because of coronavirus fears. And they want to apply that. They want those powers for climate, and they want the public to get used to this way of living. They want the public to get used to the travel restrictions, to get used to quarantine, to get used to, as the UK power chief said, get used to electricity only when it's available. They want people to get used to living the life they want only when it's government approved and okayed by your health official, etc. So this is the vision. Living under a quarantined virus hysteria is how the climate activists envision the future, living under a climate emergency hysteria. So it's a real eye-opener. If you like life under coronavirus fears and government action, then you'll love life under the climate agenda.
Yeah, on the one hand, I recall the Y2K panic that didn't come through and various other panics along the way. On the other hand, I see what's happening in China, I think, but I actually don't know what's happening in China. I see videotapes mainly of government brutality, not actually of the health situation. I think part of the problem is we don't know what the real facts are. I find it odd that Italy has put more than 10 million people under quarantine, because Italy has a pretty free press and a fairly liberal democracy. I don't know what to make of that. On the one hand, I don't want to be foolish. I remember when we interviewed a statistical hydrologist about the likelihood of once-in-a-century floods and how it makes sense to have insurance, and how, it makes sense to spend some money on an unlikely outcome. His advice was just have an M16 and a bucket full of bullets in your attic. That's probably enough, but how perhaps you want to have some food anyway stored away. Like, he was making the statistical case for being a prepper. That's sort of a different approach than give all the power to the government. It's sort of the opposite approach. It's prepare for anarchy. I feel like I'm somewhere in between. I don't want to be reckless. Maybe I should make some prudent adjustments to my life, but I certainly don't want to hand things over to the government or these climate opportunists. That's an excerpt from my daily show, The Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.